Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And thank you, Alec Webb. Welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek podcast number 183. We're in our Studio C at MotorWeek headquarters in lovely and beautiful Owings Mills, Maryland. Around the table today, four pumped-up automotive guys. I've got Ben Davis. Hey, guys. He's our road test producer. Our online content coordinator, Greg Carlos.
That's me.
Our over-the-edge guy, Zach Maskell.
How you doing?
And our video producer and editor, Joe Ligo.
Got my hat.
Who's also the
Ball
producer
cat.
of the podcast.
Nice ball cat.
They're just commenting on everybody's wardrobe. We got a viewer question. We have lots of questions. We have Zach's going to tell us what he's been up to lately. We're talking about Ford's biggest, most expensive SUV and also their smallest, lowest price crossover. Where do we start? Let's start with the small end of the game. The 2018 Ford Ecosport, their subcompact entry into the crossover world that's been around for a long time. It's primarily designed to be sold in the Far East in India, and I believe it's made in India. Is that correct? Does anybody remember? I think that's right. I think it might be made in more than one place. But anyway, it's a new entry. It hasn't had much done to it to make it Americanized. Two engines, a 1-liter turbo i3 and a 2-liter i4, which is the one we tested. Okay, let it rip.
Well, to clarify, because Greg had to explain this to me, it's called the Ecosport.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I call it?
No, you're right.
I got it. Echo.
But if
it's Eco Boost,
yes,
and Ecosport.
Yes, because I kept getting it wrong, and Greg corrected me.
It's not Ecosport. No. It's Eco.
To start it off, it is solid basic transportation, and the one we had was a 2-liter with all-wheel drive. Granted, it was a little cramped inside, and it was about as stiff as a horse-drawn wagon. But it did have all-wheel drive. And it
was very modern.
And it'll get them in the dealerships. I'm not going to say that the take rate's going to be huge. If you drive one, then most likely you're going to upgrade to something a little bigger, a little more comfortable. But
like an Escape?
It is cheap, so it'll get you in there. And if you like it, good for you.
To be fair, we do clamor a lot for just cheap, basic transportation. Now, we specifically call for like base pickup trucks, I think, and then maybe like a cool sporty hatchback. So this, we can't be too upset that somebody has given us this, but then the reality is we get inside of it and it's way smaller than we even expect it to be, because I drove it a lot. And I honestly just got tired of getting in and out of that thing, because it's a task.
You could overlook one or the other. If it rides rough, that's one thing.
True.
If it's tight, then
but
that's another.
It does have the tech that you want. I mean, for a young person who wants to buy a new car, you live in the city. It has Apple CarPlay, which Ford hadn't had for a while, and they're now just putting it into a lot of their cars.
It had a lot of room in the back. I mean, not so much leg room, but when you had the old-style flip-fold second-row seat, but you had actually a pretty big cargo bay.
I could definitely see a couple of my friends that live in the city buying that car. I mean, they're not.
That's what it was for.
They're not car people. It's got the EcoSport name. I don't really think it's that sporty, but I mean, this is a decent A to B car. It's like you guys are saying. The tech was there. The interior wasn't terrible. Yeah, it's small, but like I said, a lot of my friends that need parking passes and stuff to park on these streets by Camden Yards and stuff. I mean, this car would work there.
They'd love it because you would zip right in.
It's easy to park.
Now, they're probably only going to keep this current model a couple more years, so there's probably a new one coming that'll have us more in mind. But here's a question for you. With Ford doing away with traditional cars for almost the most part, and they keep saying we're going to have all these new low-end vehicles with hatchbacks and four-wheel drives and all this to make sure that entry-level buyer has got something to choose from, does something like the EcoSport work in that scenario? If you were a parent and you took your sibling in, or not sibling, your kid in, to look at something like that, is that a reasonable first vehicle?
Sure.
I think a parent would feel a lot more comfortable with their kid driving that instead of a Fiesta. Yeah,
why?
I mean, I think it just the look. I don't know if they're actually going to compare like IHS ratings on it, but I think the look of it looks a little bigger, a little
higher
stronger,
ground
clearance,
sure. All-wheel drive,
more
something.
It gives the appearance of more room inside. Whether or not it actually does over Fiesta, I don't know. But I think that
perceived safety.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you look at the list of what it offers, it looks very attractive on paper.
And if you tell a parent you only got a 1-liter engine, they think safe. So,
Right,
and
you're not going
I
fast.
drove that engine extensively in Europe in a C-Max, and I have to say it surprised me.
that's that 1 liter,
The 1-liter
inline 3.
three-cylinder. Yeah.
Ford did a PR stunt
It
where I
wa-
guess you
it
can fit
wasn't
that.
that rough.
You can fit that engine into a carry-on bag. Like they did. It was a couple years ago, but I remember they did a thing where if you tear the whole engine apart, you can fit all the components
No
into
kidding.
a carry-on
Oh, that's
bag. I
fun.
thought that was kind
I
of
used to
fun.
beat around in a 3-cylinder Metro
there you
back
go.
in the 90s. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Now we go from the smallest to the biggest. Our 2018 Lincoln Navigator, believe it or not, the North American Truck of the Year award winner. It's a 3.5-liter twin-turbo EcoBoost V6.
There.
It's pricey, $72,000 and up. It basically is the same as the Expedition as far as mechanics, but very different inside and out.
You can
look
spec it up
out,
to like $100,000.
Cadillac, this is your new big contender.
Yeah, and you guys got to check out the interior options. Joe was showing them to me when we
Yeah,
first got that thing in.
I'm a little disappointed. The one that we drove was just kind of a basic black leather and wood, pretty. But then you look on the web and you see they have these. They have one called the Yacht Club
Yeah.
that
trim.
thing is
They're-
sick.
They're making
I wish
an
we got
all-out
that.
push to
it's
almost
gorgeous.
have a custom-built vehicle.
Oh,
So-
the Yacht Club one has like baby blue leather and like teak wood inserts on the dash, and then they have like a burgundy one on it. And it's like horse themed or like wine themed or something. Rich people stuff.
Yeah.
That's the themes. But the high end
You have to
interiors
own a
are
sailboat to
All
that
right,
one.
let's talk about something.
captain embroidery on your ball cap.
What did it drive like?
Well,
big.
let's just say the seats were super comfortable, by the way. They're just as comfortable as
You're
they
probably
look.
telling people everything they really want to know about the Navigator.
Yeah,
Seriously.
It drives big and it drives quiet and it drives comfortable.
Not
It does
too
all that
soft for
stuff.
you?
I had it on the track and it was the steering seemed a little slow and numb, but I mean it's a Navigator through a cone course. What do you expect?
you were doing hot like mid 15s in the quarter
It
mile.
does
weren't
haul the groceries. Yeah,
Right.
I was in the high 14s.
How did it brake? Because it does seem to have a fairly
The
soft
brakes
version
were-
of the suspension.
Yeah, the brakes were 120 feet
Well, that's
pretty
not-
consistently
that's
with no
pretty
fade.
amazing
They
for
really
that
brought
vehicle.
they brought it down
I think
hard.
they had good feeling, too, from
Good
what I
feeling,
remember.
easy pedal. I mean, even the frailest of legs could operate this brake pedal in emergency
it's
situations. No
super
problem.
easy to drive, and I was really impressed with the body roll in the thing. Like,
Huh.
I could definitely take it around turns on my one favorite road. I take every car we get.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's not what I thought. It's pleasantly
manageable,
surprised. Yeah.
Predictable, very. Yeah.
I know,
But it's still big. You know it's big.
I know
That's for
that
sure.
Cadillac is hurrying up the next Escalade because of it. So
Yeah.
they're feeling they've already discounting the Escalade $10,000.
Call me
that?
crazy, and I very well could be.
You're
but
crazy, man.
Doesn't the Tahoe have more Ford flavor in it than the Navigator? And the Navigator seems to have more GM flavor in the design.
In,
than-
like, the
than
language
most
you're saying?
Ford.
Well,
When
if you
that
look-
Tahoe
I
first
think-
came out,
I
it
think-
looked like a Ford to me. It looked
It
like
did, really.
And when I saw this nav, I first thought that kind of looks like what the Tahoe should have looked like, and vice versa to me.
The interior, I'd agree with you. The interior has, I don't want to, it has a GM flavor to it because I think it's so ornate. And an older GM flavor. I mean, the interior is pretty striking. I don't like the gauges,
I know
but
what you mean.
when you look at the different shapes and the way that the screen sets up, it kind of reminds you of a Buick. Or something
Old
like
Delta
that, or an
88s
old
and
Delta
stuff,
88.
yeah.
I gotta
There
admit,
is some kind of throwback.
I was a little
aspect.
confused at first looking at it
Yeah.
because I saw it from afar. I'm like, okay, that definitely caught my eye. What is this?
But the
And
best
then-
thing is, it doesn't feel like an expensive Ford, right? Like that's what
No,
they've been
I think
trying
it has
so
its own
hard.
character. I think it feels like
That's
it's
a really good
different
point.
brand.
Because it doesn't
Yeah,
just feel
very
like,
good
oh, it's an
point.
expedition. I paid
Yeah.
more money for it.
Not at all.
And
Because
that's,
the
They've
expedition
been
does-
doing a really good job of differentiating the brand. I think this is by far the best yet.
Yeah.
I'll get in my one big gripe, and that is we haven't figured out how to bring up any real gauges. All you've got is pointers for your tack and speedo, and then you got a digital speedo in the middle.
You want more
we're not
info
sure if
from the
we're-
gauge
there's-
cluster.
Yeah, I'd like to actually see something.
And
other
it just
than a black
highlights
screen.
in the tack. It just kind of highlights
It's almost
like,
like a
oh,
ghost
you're at
image.
2,700.
Right.
I'm like,
I think,
hold on, where am I right now?
that's a little
Jags
strange,
and
yeah.
Land Rovers do a similar thing where like you only see a little bit before and after the,
and that's
the
what they're
needle.
doing.
It's like a flashlight in the dark kind of thing with the gauges.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a very good analogy.
I've got a quick gripe to add. I believe it's pretty much the same block as in the Raptor, same transmission. In the Raptor, I didn't notice. I noticed a little bit of clunky downshifting in casual driving, a little, but in the Navigator, I noticed it a lot more. And sometimes it's kind of loud, kind of
like
an
an old-fashioned Detroit clunk.
Yeah, like the clunk that my Tahoe does, my 01 Tahoe. I get a lot of that hard clunk too, but that car's got 180,000 on it.
I will say that it is a expensive looking vehicle, I think. The interior is as elegant as anything I've ever seen built in this country. It's giving Cadillac fits, I understand, and so I think they're going to do very well with it. It's also their new concierge vehicle. I guess they're doing a lot of subscription services and concierge all
Dealer
based around
extra, they get a guy to bring it to your house or whatever.
Yeah.
And the one thing that stood out to me about it was just the way, like you said, it separates itself, but also it people are buying them like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, they really are.
And gas prices are going up, but the Ford put out like a company memo that said that no Ford employees are allowed to buy it for like another 6 months because they're selling every single one they build.
Well, it's rated at 23 high weights, which for a vehicle that big is not bad at all.
And if you're currently in a vehicle that big, chances are this one's going to
17.
This one's going to sip a lot less.
All right, 2018 Lincoln Navigator. We're going to move on now to our FY, I mean, not our FYI. Zach is here and he's going to tell us what he's got in store for his upcoming Over the Edge through the summer, and maybe give us a hint on some of the ideas you're looking at for the fall and the new season.
Sure. So, first of all, I definitely want to talk about Race of Gentlemen. You guys have heard of that, Wildwood, New Jersey. One of the coolest looking YouTube videos I ever came across a couple years ago. And I was like, man, that just looks like fun. So, I mean, it is awesome, just the culture and just everything that goes on there. Everybody's, there to just have a good time. They got a huge bonfire at night,
area.
and everybody's dressed in the air. 50s,
It's cool
pretty
place.
much, yeah.
Neon lights and...
Yep, Indians, old Harleys. I don't think they allow any motorcycles are newer than 1947,
Might be right,
if I recall. And they handpick pretty much who can race. So from what I learned is, racing pretty much, not saying that it started on sand, but especially when they were testing cars, they loved to do it on sand because if something got out of control, they could steer it into the ocean. If, something happened, an explosion, whatever, they could just pick up the pieces once it happened. But that tradition,
So did they race on the beach there?
They do race on the beach.
Like
they do it Saturday
the
and
Northeast
Sunday.
Daytona.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just a
different
big
culture.
Vintage race down the beach.
Big
in New
vintage
Jersey,
race down the beach, but they also have I think they might judge the cars that are there also, and that's the other cool thing. Not a lot of car shows have bikes and cars, so there's lots of 50s and 60s cars there, rat rods, just all that really cool stuff like biker vibes to it, Indians, old Harley Davidson shirts, all that good stuff. So, I mean, if that's your thing, then I would highly think about checking that out.
I like that there's a minimum age limit. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, for the bikes especially. And, I mean, the cars have to be the same way because in everything I saw, I mean, there was nothing relatively new at all. But, yeah, definitely.
Well, when you park them next to some of those vintage motels, I mean, they look like a time warp.
Yeah. And I don't know, everybody, they're building these motorcycles in their garage. I mean, same with the cars. And, I know they have some guy that comes from Japan, I think it is, every year, so he can race. And it's just, it looks like a blast, man. It makes me kind of want to build up an old Indian or something.
What else you got up your sleeve?
So we also have, it's called Impact. It's in the Pocono Raceway.
Poconos.
It's going to be awesome. Been around I think this is going to be the 8th annual year coming up in August. And it's just a huge European car show. But, the thing that I love about it the most is you don't just drive and hard park and get out and talk to your friends, which is half the reason I don't really go to car shows much anymore because I just get so bored, man.
Just walking around.
I got to do
stuff.
stuff.
Walking and looking. You got to move.
Yeah. And so they got burnout competitions. They got drift taxi ride-alongs. They got roll races.
Do they do anything on the high bank or just use the infield or what?
They do. I think the roll races are kind of in the middle of the high bank. I don't really know that they're doing anything.
Well, it's not a steep high bank. We used to test. A lot of you guys weren't with the show at that time, but we used to go up there 2-3 times a year. That was one of the tracks we always went to, and it was always cold. I don't care what time of year.
The retro reviews.
It's built in the mouth of a volcano. That's an
cool.
extinct volcano. So you would be outside the track, and it would be one temperature. You'd be inside the cone of the volcano, which is where the track is, and it would be like 25 degrees colder, and the wind would blow. It's kind of a cool place.
Dang. Well, this event's going to erupt. It's going to be sick.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you, Zach. All right, we're going to move on to our viewer questions. We've actually got a number of them. We have questions about day-to-day testing of the VW Beetle convertible versus the Beetle Coupe. How good is the top insulation? Does it take longer to warm up in the winter? Well, we really only had it at the edge of the winter.
That's true. I would say I was pretty impressed with the top insulation itself, though. It's not just, you're not touching canvas. There is a headliner
it's a
to
multi-layer top.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought it was fairly quiet. I thought it blocked out a lot of noise.
It's pretty easy to forget that you're in a convertible.
Mm-hmm. Is the gas mileage any different than the coupe? I'd say it's about the same. It's a little heavier by, 200 pounds?
Yeah.
The EPA, I looked on fueleconomy.gov, the numbers are the same. And, I mean, when I drove the Beetle convertible we had, you get, high 20s, low 30s, kind of no matter what.
Convertible top, did it leak?
No leaks.
And was it worth the extra money over the coupe version? That purely depends on whether or not you want a convertible.
If I'm going to drive a Beetle, it's going to be a convertible, so it's worth it to me.
There you
one
go.
of the finer convertibles I've driven.
That's the thing. Is like
it was very solid.
Yeah, I didn't mind
no
driving the car
cowl
at
shake
all.
or anything.
What other convertibles are there? I mean, I'd say the Beetle is one of the better choices for just a regular use.
One of the least expensive. ones.
Mini is right up there.
Convertible.
Yeah.
very
Okay.
likable
That answers those questions. Actually came from.
He also asked how long the convertible top usually lasts.
Oh.
That's
that's
up
a
to how you
maintenance
store it.
thing.
Whether you leave it out in the sun,
Yeah.
whether you take care of it and keep it clean. Keeping it just washed is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're out, Brian. Question came from Brian in Dublin, Ohio. And Brian, where you are, you pretty much need a garage in wintertime.
I would go 20 years in a garage, 10 years outside of a garage.
I'd say that's very,
And
accurate.
they last longer when they're up, right? There's something about if you keep
Yes,
it
because
parked, even if it's inside, if you leave
it'll
it down,
crack.
you crease it and stuff.
Crease it, cracks, it does dry rot. Having owned a couple of convertibles.
Having snow lay on top of
Yeah.
it's an issue as well.
Doesn't Armor All and those companies build like a convertible top maintainer type liquid you could probably rub on it?
Well, my only recommendation is use whatever the manufacturer says do it and be careful of what you put on it.
Yeah, you don't want it to like dissolve the top.
Or put a plastic coating on it that will crack.
Yeah.
All right, rants and raves. Anyone got anything on their mind?
I just was thinking about this the other day. I think we were talking about our long terms like a podcast or two ago.
Yeah.
And we brought up the fact that we
Seat
all
placement?
think no. We brought up the fact that we think the Crosstrek is, I think we quoted, dangerously slow. And somebody got on and commented and said that we were wrong and that there were plenty of other cars that are slower. And you're right, there are plenty of other cars that are slower, but I just want to kind of clarify what we mean. And I'll use an example of what I was doing yesterday. I wanted to turn left across 2 lanes. And it's a kind of a blind corner, so you got to be confident and get out there. And once you make a decision, you got to go. And I was in the Crosstrek, and there's something about the way the CVT delivers the power is that like immediately as soon as you touch the throttle, you get good power, but then it like flattens off immediately.
It does.
And that's what we mean by dangerously slow. So the numbers might not suggest that it's as slow as it is, but I swear, having driven it, and all of us have driven it,
It's
that's
less
what
about
we
the
mean.
numbers.
So,
it's more about
right,
the actual
exactly.
delivery on a real road.
CVTs, basically, you get up to a pretty much preordained RPM level, and then the transmission has to do its thing with the cones and the belts, and that takes time.
Yeah.
It's some of the same complaints we have about poorly done electronic throttles, and almost every car has one now. We're having the same complaints about e-shifters where there's no real linkage. If you've got somebody coming at you and you need to go in reverse and you put it in reverse, it has to think about it for a half a second before you go. So
some are worse than others. For sure.
Some are much worse than others. So a lot of this new technology, it saves fuel and maybe it's more convenient, but I don't know. It doesn't react as fast.
I just wanted to clarify because I don't want to sound like we're beating up on that engine because we know that engine has power.
Yep, absolutely.
It's just the way it's delivered in this particular application. It can.
The funny thing is, it's probably a software fix, right? Like
Well, yeah, just ask Elon Musk.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Oh,
I mean, that is one of the biggest things that kind of bugs me about that car, though.
Other than that, though, I mean, I really enjoy everything else about it.
Can you still get that with a manual? Anybody know off the top of their head?
Yes, like in a base. And I think it might even be a 6-speed manual now, too, for Subaru.
So you got options.
But if you get a base level one,
might have a pretty decent price tag then, huh?
Probably does. All right, that wraps it up for our MotorWeek Podcast 183. I want to thank everybody that's around the table today and also our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, who makes us sound much better than we have any right to sound, our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, and again, I mentioned that Joe Ligo here is our producer for the day, and he takes care of the video and audio end of what you'll see online. Let's see, that's it. I guess everyone watch MotorWeek on public television stations across the country. Our website is motorweek.org. Pull down the tab at the top and you can get an accurate and up-to-date idea of where we're seen in the times. But also, if you missed that or you just want to see the show on someone else, go over to the Velocity channel. We're on all the time there, but particularly on Tuesday nights. Thanks, everybody. And for everyone out there, thanks for being a major part of why we all do MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.